Welcome back to the free game interview series. Once again, this series was designed with the intentions of motivation, inspiration, and education, bringing the stories that student athletes need to hear. I think that there's a lot of value in the stories of the people that have walked this journey before us. And a lot of times, because we're not educated on their stories or on their journeys, we feel like we're the first ones taking this journey. We're the first ones walking these steps. And we bump our heads in places that we shouldn't if we knew places that those have gone before us. So I thought the time was right for this. Last episode, we had Cam Buckner, State Representative of Illinois. We talked a lot about what's going on in America right now. We talked about what's happening and how inner cities and cities all around the country are responding to police brutality. They're responding to all the different things that have plagued the black community for years. And I just thought that on the heels of that, I saw a student athlete come out and say, hey, you know what? Going to an HBCU might not be so bad. That might be a good opportunity for me. And immediately, my mind clicked because this is something that I've been talking about for the past 2 years. I was blessed with the opportunity. Dr. Teresa Price, she heads up the Black College Expo. She brought me on as a guest speaker on athletics and athletic recruiting. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years. And that's something that we've been talking about on that platform. I think that a lot of these younger athletes think that, okay, hey, I'm going to be doing something new, not realizing that some of the greatest athletes of all time came through HBCUs, from Steve McNair, Michael Strahan, Charles Oakley, Rick Mahorn, Shannon Sharp, Willis Reed, Althea Gibson, Walter Payton, Jerry Rice. I could keep going on and on. Wilma Rudolph, Earl the Pearl Monroe, Doug Williams. I could go on and on greatness that has came through HBCUs. And I think that sometimes because we haven't, we're not taught that and we haven't been educated on that, we forget what's happened there. And it's not a new novel idea that because we've got emotion now, hey, let's go this route. Long before, back in the day, when the Kentuckys of the world that everybody's chasing now wouldn't recruit black athletes, that was the pathway that we had to go to get that exposure. And I think that, we look at the wrong things, and guys and kids look at the wrong things, and hey, I can't go there because I can't make it to the league. I can't go there because, they don't have the same level of facilities. I can't go there because they don't have the same media exposure. Not understanding and not realizing that they are the ones that generate those facilities and generate that media exposure. The finances, if you look at the financial side of college athletics, and I'll use Texas as an example because University of Texas are the benchmark when it comes to revenue. They have 3 profit-generating sports, football, basketball, and baseball. In 2019, their operating revenue was $223.9 million. They have a Nike deal, 15 years, $250 million. They have $22 million per year in media rights, in licensing fees and royalties. Their operating expenses, $206.5 million, which are more than 10 times the overall revenue for the highest HBCU, which was I'm sorry, it's blanking from me, Prairie View A&M at $17.9 million. So we're talking 10 times the operating budget, 10 times the operating revenue. So of course, yeah, you're going to look at it and say, okay, they have nicer facilities, but guess what creates that? It's the student athletes. If you have the student athletes at the HBCUs, you bring the media rights, you bring the shoe companies, you bring the ticket sales, you bring all of that follows the athlete, not the other way around. Nobody's going online and saying, hey, I want to sign up for a Longhorn Media Network because I just can't wait to see that Longhorn on the front of the jersey. It's more about the name on the back of the jersey. And I think that when our players understand and realize that they're the ones that hold the power, you talk about, okay, the HBCUs don't have the facilities. Imagine what a Mississippi Valley State, a Howard, a Hampton, a Southern, imagine what they would do with a $223 million budget. That's insane. Imagine the facilities that could be built. Texas, outside of paying over $5 million for their student athlete scholarships, they gave back a $3.5 million transfer to the university to support academics last year. Imagine having an additional $9 million poured into the university's budget. Imagine the professors that could be hired. Imagine the research that could be funded. I mean, the opportunities are endless. And I think that because we don't understand how that works, right now it's fun to say, hey, I'd love to play at an HBCU. But we have to look deeper into that and see what's the reality of doing that. So the best person to talk about that is here on Zoom with us, Lindsey Hunter. And the reason why he's the best person to do it, I hear a lot of people talking about, from the coaching side, hey, we should look at HBCUs. And then I take a look back and they didn't go to HBCUs. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. No disrespect. Everybody has their own path and maybe they see the light after they've done that. But Lindsey Hunter played at an HBCU. Played at two of them, actually, Alcorn State and Jackson State. SWAC Player of the Year in 1993. Was drafted 10th overall. Lottery pick out of an HBCU. So while everybody's saying, hey, it can't be done out of an HBCU, it can be done, it has been done, and it can be done again. So, without further ado, I welcome Lindsey Hunter to the show. Excited to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time out of your day.
Man, I appreciate you having me. A lot of great points you made. Just talking about, different aspects of, finances and all those things, are so important and so crucial to building our HBCUs and getting kids to understand, and trust me, I'm a big advocate of HBCUs. You know that. But like I tell everybody, HBCUs aren't for every kid. Every kid is different. It's different.
Absolutely.
And I get that. Some kids, they couldn't thrive at a HBCU, and some of those kids do better going to North Carolina and all those, so I get that part of it, and I'm really understanding in that way. But I think there are some kids like myself, like I grew up in that environment. My father took me to every football, basketball game that was played in Jackson, and so I was a fan, and that was my desire. I always wanted to go to the HBCU. That was like big to me. So, a lot of it is really is predicated on what the kid is exposed to.
Absolutely.
And like you were saying, if we can educate a lot of kids about, hey, there are a lot of successful athletes that have made it from HBCU.
Well, and then not only athletes. Look at what Michael Strahan's doing after the game.
Absolutely.
Look at what Jerry Rice is doing after the game.
Right. These guys are successful in life as well as, on the gridiron or on the court. And that matters because it shapes who you are. It shapes, your future and the things that, you get to be exposed to. And I love the HBCUs because they're when I was there, it was big enough, but it wasn't too big that it wasn't family feeling.
Right.
I love that about it. I love that about it. I love the fact that, the teachers knew us by name.
Yep, absolutely.
And some kids don't want that, and I understand. But yeah. I do want more kids to, look at it and just not just take it off the table. And I the thing that I'm hearing and I'm kind of combating now is a lot of the high profile kids are saying, well, HBCUs never came and approached me. Well, and I kind of relate that to, I say, well, a lot of times girls don't approach you guys, but you go approach the girl.
Right.
I said, to let her know that you have interest, right?
Right.
I said, so if and it's the same way. Some HBCUs look at kids and say, well, we know we're not going to get them.
Right.
Well,
do you think that's a little bit of a defeatist mentality? Do you think that that's something that needs to change? I mean, because the reality is you and I both know, and you know better than anybody else. It's not where you go, it's what you do when you get there, right? And, I think that one of the things that, and that's why I was so excited, you and I talked about this. You and I talked about this, before you took the job at Mississippi Valley State. We were talking about what that was going to look like for, HBCUs and the future of, student athletes. And once again, like you said, it's not for everybody. But I think people seeing your journey and seeing that, you're not just somebody that made it to the NBA, right? You have a lot of guys that made it, never played. You were in the league for 17 years and averaged almost 25 minutes a game, right? Like, it's, that success in the coming from an HBCU, two-time NBA champion, right? Like you scored almost 8,000 points, right? Like that's not a I just was there. I have a postcard and I traveled around with some teams. No, you had a great career, and I think that that's important for these guys to see that not only did you have a great career at that level, but you went on and played at the HBCU level. You went on and played at the NBA level, played at a high level, and then from there now you came back. You're not coming back if you don't believe in what that system creates. So I think that part of shifting and changing the narrative is guys like yourself that, a lot of times pass up these jobs because they look at them and they say, oh, you know what, I don't see myself being successful. So, I was excited to see you take it. I'm excited to see you there. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But one of the things I want to stick on is, you talked a little bit about that family atmosphere and environment from, being at Jackson State, and, that's something that, your father kind of, he had you around that for a long time. What would you say is the biggest takeaway from your time at Jackson State, and how did that experience, prepare you for life in the NBA and prepare you for life after basketball?
I think the biggest thing was all the people that helped me along the way, and the professors as well as my coaches. There are a lot of those people, relationship-wise, that I still talk to this very day. And I don't know how much that happens, at the Power 5 level.
Right.
Because it's so many students and so many kids, and they see 1,000 kids come through, but these are people that when I got to the next level that I still kept in close contact with, just to talk about, when I was struggling, or when something that I just needed to know, or I needed somebody to listen to me, and that was big for me, coming from the being a family guy, my mom and dad. We all were close, and I think that I needed that environment. I needed, I don't want to call it coddling, but it was coddling in a different type of way,
right?
In a good way that prepared me, to last 17 years,
right?
And working after that, and like you said, a lot of the HBCU products, we're not just the product of the athlete. We do other things. I was able to work in the front office with the Phoenix Suns. I learned how to put together a front office, how to put together a scouting board, how to put together a draft board, how to run scouting meetings. I worked right under Lance Blanks, who was our GM, and he taught me everything. Learn how to do write scouting reports, not only for games but for players. I did all of that, and went on to coach, went on to run the player development. These are things that people get paid a lot of money to do. And I love the fact that I was pushed in a lot of different directions, and I learned a lot because I educate guys. The guys that I have to mentor. If you are passionate and you love basketball, doesn't matter where you go play, because some of the relationships that you make along the way are going to help you in the future.
Right.
And I promise my guys, you commit to me at Mississippi Valley, you have a lifelong relationship. So I'm going to do for you everything in my power to make sure you're successful after basketball.
Yeah.
If you want to work, you want to try to be a scout, or you want to any of those things, I can pick up the phone and call 8 or 9 GMs directly.
Right.
And that comes from me being in an environment where I could reach back and call, Andy Stoglin, who can call whoever to give me some assistance. And I think that means a lot, those relationships and the from the grassroots all the way up means a lot. And it helped shape and form me.
Yeah. And I think that, with a lot of kids, that's as I was reading, because I read deep into the comment sections on that post of, maybe I should go to an HBCU, or maybe we should send our players to HBCU. I read deep into the comment sections. And that was the number one rebuttal was, okay, well, but there's no pipelines to the pros. And that's a 100%, rebuttal to what that is being said, because there's not too many guys at any level of college basketball that have experience in the NBA front office that can say, hey, this is how it works. I can show you what they're looking for in scouting. I can show you, how that process looks. I can build you up and put you in position to reach your goals. So in the 93 draft, there were 4 players taken from HBCUs. At any point, did you feel like not playing at a mid-major or not playing at a high major was going to be a hindrance in your draft process?
Not one time. And it's funny because I remember all of the guys being in Chicago together, and we were so proud. We were so excited and proud that because we felt all along that, hey, I'm just as good as, Bobby Hurley, or I'm just as good as Rex Walters. We all felt that way.
Yeah.
And for us to have 4 guys get drafted, man, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And it's something that I always remembered, and I always kept that feeling like, man, can that happen again? Can we get enough guys? And trust me, I talk about this all the time with a lot of people. Well, the 5-star, the 4-stars don't want to come. I said, well, they do, but sometimes you have to find the 4 and 5-star.
Right.
Sometimes you have to find the Damian Lillards,
right.
the CJ McCollums, the
Yep.
Steph Currys, the Paul Georges.
Yep.
Those are Hall of Fame guys, and none of those guys were 4-star, 3-star players.
So a big piece of that puzzle, though, is, and one of the things that I've noticed is when we look at, a lot of people don't realize that budgets create that atmosphere. So if there's not a budget there for scouting and evaluation, I mean, we talk about, for example, Ja Morant. Ja Morant was found in a back gym at an AAU tournament. It wasn't like he was on that main stage. A coach just so happened to hear a ball bounce and walk back and saw this kid and say, oh, wow, like I need to. But if you're not even in the building to be able to have that opportunity, that's where I think that we're going to be leaning on it. And like you started the conversation with, it's one thing to be emotionally charged. It's another thing to have action behind it. We need grassroots coaches that truly believe that, okay, these players should be looking at the HBCU route. They need to be calling these HBCU coaches and not calling them about their 7th and 8th guy. Because that's the thing I hear all the time, right? Like, I have this argument with guys and say, well, I called so-and-so about a kid that I had and, he didn't call me back. And I'm like, well, you called him about a kid that's really not even a Division II player. And you expected, them to be excited because you called them about him. No, let's have the conversation about, that kid that's maybe looking at a school in the horizon, but, might be a good situation or a good fit down here. Give him the opportunity, because a lot of them just haven't been exposed. A lot of them just don't know what it is that you can bring to the table. And that conversation alone can change the dynamic of whether or not it's a good fit or a good situation for them.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head when as I've had coaches call me about players and, not knowing what I've already signed. And I try to, especially with young coaches, I try to really give them my ear and really be, connect with them, because I want all young Black coaches to feel like I have a chance to make it. Like because I know how hard it is for those guys trying to get in this business, man. It's tough. So I try to give them my ear, and I try to give them input on, things that happen. And I'm going to tell you a story. There's a coach, he sent me a video of a kid. I don't even know how he got my number, but he sent me a video of a kid. So I watched the video.
This wasn't me, was it? This wasn't me.
No, you guys take care of me. You guys are taking care of me. So I look at the video, and I'm like, oh, okay. And he puts under the text, Coach, this kid will be the best player on your team. And I know we were bad. I'm like, geez, I know we were bad. And I told him, I said, I'm not knocking a kid. And I said, but man, I'm thinking to myself, and I said, well, let me send him a message back. So I text him back, and I said, send me a list of all the schools, of all your players that signed, whatever, or committed. Send me a list of where everybody went. Oh, man, he sent me the list back, and the kid that he was sending me wasn't on the list. And I said, wow, that's impressive. I said, listen, I learned a long time ago when I was scouting in the NBA, our GM would put our feet to the fire on anything that we felt passionate about. And his last question to you would be, would you put your job on the line for this right here? That would be his question to, and I saw grown men cower down and go, you know.
Yeah.
So and that was my advice to him. I said, look, I know we were bad. I said, but you know, I've been through rebuilding before. I'm a winner. I said, you can look at me from high school to however far back I played. You can look. I'm a winner. It's in my DNA. It's in my track record. I said, we're going to win, and we're going to win on a high level. I said, but, you know, if you're going to recommend, especially if you don't know the coach and you're just, you know, the right thing to do would be, coach, take a look at this kid, see if you can use him, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But don't serve everybody filet mignon and then you bring me bologna, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot of times. Like you said, they'll call you for a kid that didn't even start for them. And you're like, oh man, you don't want to, and I hate putting kids in those type of positions because you're giving them false hope about, you know, about coming to a place. And no matter what the school's record was before you got there, you got to believe they're trying to get better.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
We signed a kid, man. I know this kid could have went much higher than us. Cameron Cunningham, 6'2" guard. And when the kid committed, man, I was like overjoyed. And so now I'm going to work my behind off to make sure that if he don't get drafted, he's going to have so many NBA workouts that he's going to be tired of going to them.
Yeah.
You know that's my commitment to him.
Right. So let me ask you. So on the path of twofold, on the path of players today, you know, the skill development side, a lot of guys don't understand the transition from high school to college and from college to the NBA, right? And I was just having this conversation yesterday with John, and we were talking about, you know, how a lot of guys will have the ball in their hands as a freshman or in high school and not understand when they get to college, you're not going to have that ball in your hand. And you have to be able to do things other than score and create for yourself. You have to be able to, you know, to make shots off screens. You have to be able to defend. You have to be able to run the wing. There's so many different things you have to do. And then at the NBA level, all these teams have somebody they're paying $30 million a year to score the basketball, and they're bringing it up every time. So that's something that I think a lot of these guys don't understand and don't realize. For you, you know, you touched on it. You know, as I was listening to you, you're a winner. You've always been a winner. You know, you were SWAC Player of the Year in 1993. How did you make that adjustment from the ball being in your hands to going to the Pistons in 93, who were coming off of back-to-back championships, right? 89, 90, 90, 91. The nucleus is still there. You've got Isaiah Thomas. You've got Joe Dumars. I mean, you've got a veteran squad. How were you able to make that transition from, you know, being that guy? And you did it very well because, you know, you were, you know, all rookie team, second team, I believe, that year. And, you know, you I think it was your second year, you averaged the most assists of your career. So talk to me a little bit about, you know, that transition and how it worked for you coming out of, you know, an HBCU, being able to fit into the NBA game.
Well, I think, you know, I had Dave Whitney as my freshman year coach at Alcorn, who, you know, I won freshman of the year under him. And Andy Stogden at Jackson State, who really helped groom me and teach me how to adapt my game to what was needed. And Al Perry, who was our position coach at Jackson State, who really taught me to, you know, he was a pure point guard, so he couldn't score. So he really was, you know, he knew I played the point my entire life. I was moved to the 2 at Jackson State. It was a weird story, but that's kind of how it happened. And so he knew. I was like, you know how to make plays. I got to teach you how to score at a high level, you know? So I had all those intangibles, you know, in me at an early age. When I got to the NBA, you know, Isaiah was still there. Joe was still there. And Isaiah was, you know, he was the type of leader that I want you to carry on this torch the way I did it. So my rookie year, he put the ball in my hands, and Isaiah was basically our coach. Don Chaney was our coach, but Isaiah was, So Isaiah really allowed me to be me, and man, it felt so good because he would always remind me, even in games, he would, he would call me little fella, do what got you here, and I was like, whoa, and it made me feel great because he was not only a mentor, but he was a fan of mine. Like he talked about the game I had in against Kansas, and I'm like, man, Isaiah Thomas watched me play. That's how I kind of was with him, and I think what really it hurt me, but it helped me when he left the team, and because I think he went to Toronto after that, and we kind of was in kind of a abyss for a while in Detroit, but we drafted Grant Hill, who probably would be. I can't even put a ceiling on how good he probably would have been had he not gotten hurt.
Yeah.
And Grant was a guy, a 6'7", 6'8" wing. He was LeBron before LeBron.
Yeah.
He was LeBron as a ballerina because he was so graceful. And Grant just could do so much with the ball, so I had to play off.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to, catch and shoot. Catch it quick and go. Those are things that as a NBA player, if you're going to be around, then you have to evolve as well. And I learned that early on. I could always defend. So I said, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to defend my behind off. And I know somebody's going to need this, even at the NBA level.
Yep.
And that took me, man, that kept me being a valuable asset in the league. Hey, he can make shots, he can run a team, and he can defend.
My favorite highlight of yours, I'm trying to remember who it was, but you picked their pocket at you picked them up 94 feet on the inbound. You picked their pocket, and then you came through with the dunk. And it was just like, that's what I tell guys at that guard position. You have to be able to guard, not only defend, but defend 94 feet. You have to be, I was just having the conversation yesterday with one of our young coaches, and he was asking me, we were talking about an evaluation of a player who's a little bit undersized. He said, Justin, what would you tell him? So I would tell him he's got to be a pit bull. And he's got to give whoever he's going against a bad day. Like, that person has to walk out there on the floor and be like, man, I got to deal with this dude again today. Like, he's got to just give the ball up and jog down court because he doesn't want to deal with you. If you're going to be 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", and play at the Division I level, you have to bring the defensive intensity. And that's something that, as a fan of yours, I grew up, I'm from Detroit. I grew up in that era. I grew up, I was a fan of Joe Dumars. He was one of my favorite players. And then as you came in, and one of the things that I looked at of your game was the consistency and, what you brought, the effort. Dennis Rodman's one of my favorite players of all time. And the reason why I love Dennis so much is because Dennis didn't care who got the credit. Dennis wasn't out there to score points and not forget everybody else. I'm just trying to get mine. No, Dennis was, I'm going to sacrifice my body for the team. I'm going to sacrifice my points for the team. I'm going to make sure that whoever your best player is, I'm going to defend them. I'm going to out-rebound whoever. And I mean, you look at it, Dennis was undersized going against Pat Ewing. Dennis was undersized. I mean, whoever, Dennis against Shaq. I mean, he, Dennis would guard whoever he had to guard for the team. 1 through 5. And I think that, that's something that's missing in today's game is the defensive side. But you touched on it. I mean, being a winner, you make those adjustments. And one of my coaches told me great ones adjust. And you identify, okay, hey, this is what I need to do to be an asset to this program and an asset to this team. And, you came in, like you said, I mean, you were there during a couple of those down years. A lot of people don't remember the teal jerseys and, the Palace of Auburn Hills was empty a lot of those nights. But being a winner never left you. You went to the Lakers. You ended up at the Lakers. Won a title in 2002 with the Lakers as a teammate of Kobe Bryant. And then, ironically, you won a title with Detroit in 2004 against Kobe in that series. So we were all shaken. The entire basketball community was shaken when Kobe passed. And everybody talked about, memories they had of Kobe and their favorite highlight and their favorite experience. Being so close to Kobe and being a valuable asset on that team, and also a competitor and an opponent of his, what is something that you took from that experience that shaped and molded you as a coach, and the way that you attack your day now, attack your practices or your games now based off of, something that came from Kobe?
Well, getting to know him and talk to him and see, because you hear the stories, you hear how hard he worked, and until you witness it, you really don't understand. Because one thing I always tell young coaches, when you get a team, make sure you ask all your players who their favorite player is. I say, because trust me, he may be a 6'9" rebounding beast. If he tells you my favorite player is Kevin Durant, guess what he's gonna try to do?
He's gonna try to play like Kevin Durant.
right. So when I hear guys say, "Oh, Kobe's my favorite player," so it piques my interest. Oh, is he really? You got any idea of how hard Kobe really worked? Like, do you have any idea? Like Kobe Bryant was a maniac. He was, and my wife looks at me like I'm crazy the way I used to, because I'm absorbed by basketball. I love it. I can't run and move like I used to, but I still try to do stuff.
Yeah.
But that guy was so motivated to be great, and he would not let anything get in the way of being great. If he could control it, work ethic wise, he would do it. Like, there was, I remember when I was at the end of my career and I was with the Bulls, and I would come to the arenas really early because I wanted to beat the traffic. I didn't want anybody in my way. I had my own routine, And I remember coming. I think I was about 3 hours early, and I hear a ball bouncing. And it's dark in the arena. So normally I would walk the back way, but then I heard the ball bounce, so I walked. Who is that? And it's Kobe. Full sweat. Guy rebounded for him. And I'm like, yo, what you doing, man? He would call me his vet. He was like, what's up, my vet? He was like, I'm getting ready. I was like, okay. I walked back in the locker room, and Pete Myers was there. Me and Pete would always meet early. I said, we're in trouble tonight. He was like, why? I said, Kobe's out there, dude, getting it in. He was like, oh, man, you're right. Dude, he had like 20 in the first quarter.
Effortlessly.
Dude, it was like, and I'm sitting there because, I'm already expecting it. I'm like, ooh, everything that we wanted, he was giving it to us.
Yep.
I was like, yo, this dude right here is ridiculous. But his drive, his tenacity to be great, man. And I respect that so much, because you see players that may have more talent, but push came to shove, I'm taking Kobe because I know he's going to do everything in his power to be better than you and to be more prepared than you.
Yep.
And to me, that talent alone, man, that right there, you cannot teach. You can't. I don't know how you make a kid do that. That has to be in here.
Right. And there's not. I mean, when you talk once in a generation players, right? Like, that's a once in a generation work ethic, right? That's not something that these kids don't. A lot of them don't understand that you can't get Kobe results, with Joe from the block work ethic, right? Like, if you want those kind of results, you have to be willing to sacrifice on the highest level, as far as, everything else has to become secondary. And that's, a conversation I have with my own son. If you really want it, you have to be willing to say, you know what, everything else is not quite as important as I think it is, or as others say it is. The girlfriends, the being cool, the movies, you have to be willing to sacrifice the good in order to get to the great. And, I think that's, one of the things when I think about I had a conversation with a player, and he asked me about we talked about this. We talked about this a lot during the season. But he asked me about, hey, Coach, what do you think about Mississippi Valley State? And what do you think? And I told him, I said, first of all, you play the same position that he played. Number one. Second of all, he's experienced things on such a high level and knows how to teach you. Let's take the X's and O's out of it. Let's take, improving your shot. Let's take all of that out of it. He can teach you how to work. He can teach you how to prepare. He can teach you how to show up every day. And that's something that is a skill that if somebody doesn't know it, they can't teach it to you. I can put all the cone drills in the world out there for you, but if I'm not able to teach you pace and motor and tempo and cadence as a point guard, you can't be successful at the NBA level. Those are things that you've got to find and seek out somebody that has that level of experience. And I look at you and I look at, because of the span of time that you were in the league, you experienced the three GOATs all in their prime, right? Like you can't go on Facebook, you can't go in the barbershop, you can't show up at your uncle's cookout and not have a fight break out over who's the greatest of all time. Now, I stay out of that conversation because it's irrelevant, it's subjective. Everybody has their own idea of it. But with you, playing against Mike, back in the day, playing with and against Kobe, playing against LeBron, not going to ask you where you rank them or not going to ask you who your GOAT is, but I'm going to ask you, what would you say is the biggest similarity of their game from seeing, whether it be their work ethic, whether it be whatever the case may be, and then the biggest difference?
Well, I was blessed to play against all three of those guys, man, and play with Kobe. But you could tell Kobe invested a lot of time in studying Michael, from videos to how he held press conferences. Kobe studied Mike down to a science, and you can see the influence that that Michael had on LeBron. LeBron wore 23 when he first got in the league, and the difference in the three though is, and I tell people, I said, I'm a Jordan guy because I've seen him do things that I just didn't understand. I played against him in pickup ball, and I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Like, this guy's not from here, But Michael won Defensive Player of the Year, MVP of the league. I mean, first team all defense, won the slam dunk contest, MVP of the All-Star game. I mean, nobody else who has done that.
Yeah. No, you're right.
You're right. No, you're right. Listen, I'm an '80s. I'm a late '80s, '90s kid. So I loved Kobe. I watched Kobe in my high school years and after. But I grew up. I loved to hate Mike. I mean, being a Pistons fan. Every time every time he rolled into town, I'm like, man, here we go again. But I was excited to see it because, like you said, I mean, you never knew what was coming, and he was like he was like my Barry Sanders, right? Like you could watch Barry and watch him, and you'd be like, okay, it's a tackle for loss, and now he's down the field and it's a touchdown, and that's kind of what Mike would give you. You say, okay, well, man, he can't make anything out of that, and he would make something happen. So no, I mean you hit that right on the head with the things that he brought to the table, and experiencing those three guys in your career. How has that helped shape kind of your perspective for when you're coaching and guys talk to you about, hey, this is my favorite player, and you're able to, hey, I was right there with him. I battled with him. That's your favorite player. You got a lot of work to do. Or that's your favorite player. Let's sit down and watch film. How does that help you from the coaching perspective?
I think it's a tremendous help because, when guys give me that feedback, I can give them some feedback on, okay, you want to be like that guy? Let's compare your hours. I had a kid tell me his favorite player was Kevin Durant. I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, let's look at his gym hours and let's look at your gym hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, it can't be as lopsided as I know Kevin Durant is a gym rat.
Yeah.
He's a basketball fanatic. I read stories where he would, in the summers, if he was on business in another city, he would call that, whatever NBA team was in that city, he would call them and say, hey, I need to use your facilities. You know? So those guys don't become great just by happenstance. And I tell my players that too. I said, I can look at each one of you guys and watch you play, and I don't even have to know what you did in the summer.
Yeah.
I guarantee you I can watch you play once, and I can sit down and I can write out what you did this summer. Yeah. You know? And because basketball, it's the truth telling. You don't have to tell me you worked out. I can watch you. I can see the improvement. I can see if your handle got tighter. I can see if you've really watched games and you've learned how to make certain passes, or you've learned what a pocket pass is. Yeah. You know, and that's the great thing about our game is, you know, I can see your results.
Yeah.
The next season, I can see, oh man, this kid's really in shape this year. He really worked on his conditioning. Man, he got stronger. You know, that's what's so great about it. And I tell, you know, my players all the time, I said, you got to be, if you love this, if you're passionate about this, as I am, you know, the only drawback in college is that we have limited hours.
Yeah.
Because and I know my players are thankful for that, because some days I just sit in the gym and I'll just have my board with me and I'm drawing up stuff, and you know, I love that atmosphere. I love being in the gym, and I love watching, you know, young men, just because it builds character. When you work hard and you earn something the right way, it just builds so much character in you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, I think that's a perfect segue. You know, I'm gonna take a detour here, because you said something that it sparked something in my mind, and my mind just works like that. But you talked about basketball being the ultimate truth teller, and you're not going to get results that you didn't put the work in for, right? You can see the growth and development, right? You can chart it. If you see a guy have an injury, right, you can do an MRI, you can do an X-ray and see that it's healed. As a country, we're dealing with two concurrent global pandemics that there's no way of seeing the growth and development of, right? There's no way, we can't look out our window and say, oh, you know what, racism's gone today, right? Like there's no X-ray for it. There's no test for it. There's no, hey, you know what, we're gonna have our guys do a vertical and okay, yep, they're jumping above racism today. It's not there. So with that taking place, as a coach, how do you utilize basketball and utilize the bonds that are built on that court to help your guys navigate through something that, ultimately, if history is, the barometer of what we're going to face in the future, is something that we're going to inevitably be living with for forever.
Right. Basketball and sports in general is the one thing that brings everybody together. And you and I know we've had teammates of different nationalities. When we're on the floor, we're trying to be one unit.
Right.
And I'm not looking around to see if the guy next to me is white or black. It doesn't matter. I need you to be where you're supposed to be. I need, if coach told me to send the guy, to his right, and your help is going to be there, I don't want to have to guess if the help is going to be there. And guess what? My help has no ethnicity, Right. So basketball is one thing that all sports, it brings us all together. It's the ultimate, all of these sports are ultimate team games, and we see evidence that racism can be defeated through sports.
Yeah.
That's the evidence. So that, I think that has to somehow, and I've put out statements in Twitter and all that stuff, and I'm sincere about teaching my players to be agents of change in the community. Like it's my it's my job to not only raise them, help finish, help that product become finished, but help that product go out into their communities and know that, hey, I can do A, B, C, and D, and we can start changing things, and we can start putting people in position that the systemic racism that we keep seeing over and over in corporations and businesses and government, eventually we'll put a dent in it and it'll start to evaporate. We'll get people that are going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do in certain positions, and that's what it's going to take, because our country was built on the back of slaves.
Yeah. Our
country was built on the back of slaves. So all the injustices that have happened throughout history is now it's like a volcano. It's erupting now. It's like enough is enough.
The chickens are coming home to roost, as they used to say, right? So,
as Malcolm X would put it,
as a coach, how do you have that conversation with your guys? And once again, I take it back to basketball. There's times when you'll draw up a play and everybody can run it absolutely right. Everybody can be exactly where they're supposed to be, and the play might just not work that day, right? So, so you're already kind of set up for having that conversation with your guys about sometimes you're going to do all the right things and still not get the right answer, or still not get, and how do you frame that conversation so that your guys know, A, it's not right? Like racism isn't something that we should become tolerant of, but it's also not something that, we should be just so shocked and surprised if it does happen that we're not able to operate effectively, or we're not able to operate beyond that. And I think that that's something that I see personally, and I'm scared of for a lot of our youth that have only grown up in inner cities where everybody looks like them and their teachers look like them and their friends and their families. And then they get out into a world that doesn't look like them at all. And their first encounter of the institutionalized discrimination or the systemic racism is in a job place. And they're not conditioned to handle that. They don't know how not to wild out. They don't know how not to react when you look at some of the protest videos, and I'll tell you, I was so proud of the young black men that I saw on camera. A lot of the video they didn't want shared, and I saw through social media and things like that. But I was so proud of the men that were stopping people from tearing up buildings, the men that were passing out water to the police officers, the men that were stopping people when they were doing something that wasn't right or wasn't going to be an act of change, and saying, hey, you know what, that's the wrong way to go. How do we get our young men to think that way, to not be so angry and upset, to understand that, hey, this has to end, and I'm not going to take it, but the way that I create that change is by getting educated and becoming a piece of the change. How, as a coach who's dealing with these kids at the most pivotal years in their lives, how does that conversation, what's the tone of that conversation like?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I talked to my players last year a lot about, what it meant to be black and what it meant to, try to be successful and being examples. I preach that to my guys all the time. And I also preach to my guys that, it's okay to be angry. That's an emotion. It's okay to be angry, but don't, the Bible says don't sin out of your anger, so channel that anger into, and that's the part where we step in, is we have to teach them where to channel their anger. Oh, I didn't get the promotion. What do I do? Well, this is what we have to do. And I know it. I remember having the conversation with my father and how I used to say to him, well, that's not fair. Why do we have to work so much harder? What makes them different that we have to work harder to get what they have? And I get it. And that's our job, is to help equip these guys to be prepared for that moment and not just blow up and, I'm going to go crazy or whatever. But hey, we're going to work around it. We're going to do what they would do. We're going to find out, hey, if I really was up for a promotion or whatever, why didn't I get it? Let's find out why, and let's work on the things why not. Let's eliminate all the excuses for me not to get a position.
Absolutely.
That's our job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, growing up, my father told me every day, Justin, you're going to have to be twice as good to be even in times. And, I like you said, I mean, initially, like say as a child, I think like a child. And I would be frustrated and I would say, that's not fair. That's not right. Why is that so? Yeah. But I'll tell you that me and him having that tough conversation and him putting me in situations that were uncomfortable for me at a young, early age, it changed who I am now as a man, where my work ethic is built on, where people look at me and say, Jay, that's crazy. You did this today, you did that. That's just my normal, because I was conditioned to work twice as hard, because I said, like you said, I was of the mindset that I'm going to make it impossible for them to deny me. I'm going to make it so that, they can't pass me up regardless of the color of my skin. And I think that you hit the nail right on the head with that. So my next question would be, what is the role of the HBCU in providing avenues for that? How does that, become an incubator of sorts of creating young Black leaders?
Well, a lot of things that we discussed doing with our team is, we're going to institute like a sort of like a career day, but it'll be more of a media day for our guys, where we'll put them in kind of a simulated class where they're being interviewed and they're being exposed to different things that some of them probably have never been exposed to, Yeah. And you hit it, you said it best. Put them in uncomfortable situations, because winning is great, and I love winning, and I don't ever want to lose. I want to be 100-0. I want to win every time I play. But the reality is, we learn more through adversity than we ever do through winning.
Yeah.
And I've been on teams where we were so good that we would win because of just certain things that we could do. And I remember the coach trying to teach us, hey, don't get complacent. But it's human nature when you're successful and when you're winning. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's hard, but watching our teams, and we were great. And we would win, 10 games in a row, and we were it's on cruise control. And our coach would be preaching, hey, don't relax, don't let up. And all of a sudden we get blown out. And then now we're back to like focus again. It's human nature. And it's also human nature to not always hit the mark. They're going to fail. And we have to prepare them for that too. Yeah. But, you're not a loser because you fail. You're a loser because you don't get up and try again. So the journey of life is going to have ups and downs, peaks and valleys. You're going to have all types of adversity. How do you deal with it? How do you get up? When you've been turned down, oh, coach, I had 5 workouts and, nobody called me back. Well, are you going to quit? Well, if you quit, then you really don't want to do it, So we have to just equip them for the tough times in life. And a lot of times that's the uncomfortable part. It's like with our kids sometimes, you don't want to let your kid fall. You're like, man, I don't want him to fall and skin his knee, but I know I'm going to have to let go of that bike, and I'm going to have to let him ride that bike, and I know he's going to fall. So, it's part of growth, and we have to be willing to, help them while we can, because when they get out in the world, then, there's not much we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. My father told me, I'll never forget it. We were talking about being a father, and we were talking about raising young Black men, and you hit the nail right on the head. It's like a bow and arrow. You can aim that bow and arrow perfect. You can line up what you're shooting for, but the second you let it go, there's no pulling it back, right? Now, you just have to hope that you aimed it correctly. You have to hope that you guided it right, and now, it's on target for that bullseye. Me being a father and being a father of a young Black man, and watching his growth and development, the things that I look for in a mentor for him are all the things that I'm hearing from you right now. And I think that, those are the keys when we talk about, recruiting, and we talk about finding the right fit for you. We're not just talking about, the buildings and the resources and the facilities and the schedule and we're talking about who can pull the most out of you, who can make you the very best version of yourself. And I think that, moving forward, as we continue to grow and as we continue to, get student athletes to open their minds to something that is different from what they've seen or what the path that they've seen done, I think that we're going to see a whole lot of success in the HBCUs. And I know that, I'm going to watch Mississippi Valley State have a whole bunch of success this year. So I want to end on this note. I typically ask every single person that's on, I ask them, what's one piece of advice that they would give to their 13-year-old self? And, with you being a Division I head coach, I'm going to switch that up. I'm going to change it a little bit. Okay. All right. So my goal is that, and here and there I'll have, seniors that reach out to me for help and say, hey, Coach Justin, can you help me in the recruiting process? And I'll do everything I can to help them. But my goal is just like, when my time as a strength and conditioning coach, I spent more time on prehab than I did on rehab. Because if I can strengthen the muscles that I know are likely to become injured during that season, now I can prepare you for success versus trying to get you back healthy after you've been injured. So my goal is to reach those 13, 14-year-olds prior to walking into high school so they already have the tools and the roadmap and the guidance of, okay, this is the way I need to go. So walk with me here. We got a 13-year-old on the other end of the screen. He's watching this. He doesn't know who Lindsey Hunter is. He doesn't know who Mississippi Valley State is. He doesn't really quite know what his future looks like. What's one piece of advice based off the experiences that you've had, both in and outside the game of basketball, that you would give to that young man? Nothing to do with Mississippi Valley State, nothing to do with Lindsey Hunter, but something that you feel like, hey, this is integral and vital for this young man and for the rest of his life.
Well, man, 13, I can't even remember what it was like. I think young kids, and I've heard a lot of people talk about doing different studies about different things. I was a football kid when I was young. I loved football. My goal was to be a wide receiver at Jackson State when I was little. That was my goal. Now, my growth didn't help me any because I was like 5 feet. And I stayed there for a long time. So that didn't help me. But 13-year-old kids should be well-rounded. And what I mean by well-rounded is we get so caught up in, man, I want a young prodigy. I want to make them a young prodigy at 13. I want them to be in the gym for 8 hours. I want them to be, working, dribbling through the house. It's not important at that point.
Right.
They're too young to just. Now some kids are like that naturally, and you'll know them. That'll be the kid you scream at and tell them, stop throwing the ball against the wall. There's some kids like that. But the ones that may have other interests, I think you let them be well-rounded, and eventually they'll come back and grab whatever that thing is that they're passionate about, and they'll be great at it.
Yeah.
I just remember me being young, and I loved football so much. And in our neighborhood, we would have a neighborhood team, and they wanted to go play basketball. And I remember them coming to my house, and I was like, nah, I'm good today. I'm going to go play football, And when I finally started playing basketball, when I fell in love with basketball, that's all I wanted to do. Yeah. Like, I didn't want to do anything else. And it pushed me just to be good at it because I loved how I felt when I went to the gym and I could do certain things. It was just a feeling about it. And I never thought about like the NBA or anything like that. My dad and I never talked about the NBA. We never said, hey, my dad constantly evaluated me and said, hey, this is what you need to get better at. And I would do it.
Yeah.
And when I felt like I got it, I would call him outside and go, hey, Dad, come check this out. And he'd go, okay, yeah, now this is what you need to do. And every time it was something different. It just kept going on and on and on and on, And that's why I think like a 13-year-old kid, he should be well-rounded. He should be Academics should be on point. If he wants to play football, if he wants to play baseball, if he wants to play whatever he wants to do, let him do it. Because he's going to find his passion. I think we get locked up in having the next prodigy, and I had to argue about that. Dad, well, they're going all over. I said, son, I'm not taking a 12-year-old kid across the country. We're not doing it. I don't care how many resources we got. That's not in the plans. You're 12. Go outside. So that's huge to me, and I think that's important.
Awesome. Hey, man, I appreciate your time so much. You dropped some gems here that are going to be important for some young men and women that are navigating through the process. You already know I'm an ally for you. Anything I can do to support you, I'm all in. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today and for to talk to the listeners and the viewers. So, hey, we're all Mississippi Valley State fans today.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. Anytime you need me, let me know.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All right.
All right.